My name is Jeff Jerome.
Yes.
I'm the former curator of the Poe House here in Baltimore, but I've been associated with the Westminster Graveyard since 1976.
Jeez.
Many, many years. I know where the bodies are buried. And let me explain to you, first of all, why we're standing in what appears to be the basement of a building with graves all over the place. The cemetery, Westminster Graveyard, was here first, 1787. The building above us, the old Westminster Church, was constructed in 1852 on top of the graveyards. Now, they did this not because they wanted a tourist attraction, but because they needed a church. But the land surrounding the cemetery wasn't available for the construction of a church. So what they did was they constructed these archways, just like we walk through. And this was so people could have access to the family graves and to the mausoleums.
Wow.
Unfortunately, the criminal element seized the opportunity, and they would rob people in the catacombs.
And what year was this happening? Roughly?
Late 1850s.
Oh, yes.
And the situation got so bad that right after the Civil War in 1865, the church sealed the archways with bricks.
Yeah, wow.
And that way, only people that were coming for a burial gained access here. Now, this is no longer a church. It's called Westminster Hall. It's owned by the University of Maryland School of Law. So even though it still looks like a church, it's not a church anymore. There are graves everywhere. Now, you're scanning and looking around. You don't see too many tombstones, do you?
No.
But there are graves everywhere. Not every grave is marked with a tombstone. Okay? This was optional. Some people didn't want a tombstone. Some people had tombstones. But you want to hear a story about grave robbing?
Oh, yes, please.
Follow me. Okay. This is the tomb of Colonel Paul Bentelow, hero at the Battle of Savannah, Georgia. We have 15 generals from the War of 1812 and Revolutionary War here, along with over 200 lesser officers. Notice this one has these three handles. These three are missing. This is an early form of a combination lock designed to keep the bodies inside. You see, Davidge Hall, the first medical school in Baltimore, is still located right down the street. Mm-hmm. It was illegal, 1820s, 1830s, 1840s. It was illegal for doctors to operate on cadavers. You couldn't do it. So some doctors were so desperate they would operate on dead animals to see how the human body operated. Well, this was outrageous.
Yeah.
So they hired body snatchers, grave robbers.
Yes, they did.
Resurrection men.
Yep.
Sack 'em up men. That's what they did.
Yeah.
These people would come to the graveyards during the daytime, look for a recent burial, come back that night, and steal the body. Now, we've all seen these old Frankenstein movies where the mad scientist and Igor dig up the coffin and put it on the cart, and they run down the streets of the village making all this noise, waking up the dead. That's stupid. That's Hollywood. You had to be quiet and quick, and you didn't need the coffin. You just needed the body.
Is it true, or can you confirm, who knows, that Poe's grave was robbed?
That's nonsense.
Nonsense. Yeah, it's a big rumor, isn't it? Yeah.
You know, once these things get started, it's
Poe, so someone must have dug up his body.
Okay, but 1849 is when Poe died.
Yes.
And grave robbing was really going out of business because the city of Baltimore passed the Anatomical Act, allowing doctors to operate on prisoners that were executed, unclaimed bodies, orphans that died. So body snatching really just vanished overnight.
Yeah, interesting.
Okay, but when they moved Poe's body in 1875, there was a body. And the person who dug him up the second time was the person who buried him the first time.
And when they dug him up, the second rumor is he fell out of the bottom of the coffin.
Well, the coffin collapsed.
Yes, that's true.
Yes. And,
he couldn't get a break, even after death.
Well, when I read that story, I just envisioned these two guys going, all right, you get that end, I'll get this end, and be careful. They're pulling it up, it collapses like, oh, man.
Oh, what have we done? Because the wood would have been rotten.
Yeah.
So through he goes.
Yeah. It would be easier just reaching in and taking the bones out.
Yes.
So when that happened, people reached in for souvenirs. That's why we have pieces of Poe's coffin in various collections. So there was a body
Yes.
in Poe's grave.
Yes.
So the story about his grave being robbed, nonsense,
Great.
But so some families employed these elaborate locking systems to keep the body snatchers
Smart.
out. Yeah. And these three, this is the only one that worked. These were removed due to vandalism. So out of these three, only one worked.
Yeah.
And that was designed to confuse the body snatcher. The body snatchers had to be quiet and quick. You did not want to waste time messing with this.
No.
So you would get the bodies in the ground, you would dig a hole at the top of the coffin, break it open, so you'd see about this much of the corpse. If the person had long hair, you would yank them out that way. If the person had short hair, you'd get a meat hook, reach in the grave and hook it under the jaw and yank the body out.
How delightful.
Yeah. Now,
Gee.
before we go outside, let's talk really briefly about Poe and his relationship to his cousin Virginia. Okay. She was 13, almost 14 when they got married. He was 27. Now, when people find out about that today, it's usually, oh my God, that's awful, that's disgusting. Well, for Poe's time period, it wasn't disgusting, it wasn't awful. The life expectancy of a young woman was around 25 years. Okay, you had to marry young because most of the babies died. Now, do you know what the number one cause of death for women was in the 1820s, 1830s, 1840s?
I want to say childbirth or
No.
tuberculosis.
No.
Oh, then I don't know.
Fire.
Fire!
Fire.
What?
In the kitchen.
Please explain yourself.
Yeah, the sparks would come out, and if they caught on your dress, you went up in flames.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so fire, the number one cause of death. Then you get into childbirth.
Yes.
Okay, then diseases.
Yes.
So you had to marry at a young age because you needed to start having babies because most of the babies died. So there was nothing unusual in Poe's time period about the age difference.
Yes.
Now, they were cousins. Now, people say, well, okay, Jeff, I understand about marrying young, but they were cousins. Isn't that disgusting?
But back then that was actually more normal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Normally, when cousins got married, it was because of money, to keep money in the right family, the right religion, right social class. But with Poe and Virginia, they were both poor. So people thought, why are they getting married? Neither one of them has any money. They got married because they loved each other. Even people that hated Poe, that were spreading vicious gossip about him after his death, could not say anything about their relationship because everyone knew they loved each other. I mean, other than that, they made up all kinds of information about Poe, but they couldn't touch his relationship with Virginia.
Very true.
All right, should we go outside into the land of the living?
We shall.